Hey everybody, Ramey here, and today I'm going to talk about the relationship between esports and school. I'm going to talk about, what separates esports from other types of sports. Why, how do you justify adding an esports program to a, K to 12 school like a middle or high school or a higher ed institution like a university? Like, where is that justification? And why is esports more than just something like a sport? Like, where is this tied to learning and curriculum? How does it all fit together? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a bunch of points, and I'm going to provide sources for all of them so that you're able to use this as a simple justification. If you're trying to plan something for your university or your high school or your middle school, and you want to, talk to parents about this, or you want to be able to justify this to administrators, you need to know some of this basic information. So I've done this lit review for you. So let's start. So the first thing I want to talk about are video games and learning. And no, I'm not talking about like educational games for learning, like, math trivia game. No, I'm not talking about that, whatever. What I'm telling you right now is about video games that are played for fun, not for an instructional purpose. Because obviously if you're playing a game for it, like, there's tons of research on like games and learning and like how to take either a game and make it used for instructional purposes, or like how to, take an actual educational boring game and use that for instructional purposes. But I'm talking about games used for entertainment. If a kid is just sitting there playing a game like Call of Duty, Halo, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, what's happening in their brain? What skills are these kids actually learning when they are doing that? That's what I'm talking about. All right, so first of all, research has found that strategic gameplay, so think strategic gameplay, like games where a team or some kind of strategy is involved, which is basically every esports game because you're competing, it's a strategy, leads to higher problem solving skills and higher academic grades. Not a surprising finding, but very, very, very important. In general, just being on a computer and playing video games leads to a higher GPA in school and higher tech fluency, which is completely understandable. That a student who's playing with technology is going to have higher. But the fact that most students who are doing this stuff also tend to have higher GPAs. The socialization that occurs with and around games can lead to social knowledge construction and scientific reasoning skills. That means like the students who are doing this learn how to communicate in a group setting, but also learn how to present ideas and points using scientific reasoning. Like they're able to rationalize and make a sound argument about why their team should be doing something. There is compelling evidence indicate that video games, like action games, games for entertainment, enhance an array of perceptual, attentional, and cognitive skills. These video games can enhance various aspects of, our visual processing, the way we process things. Like we're learning how to learn from watching and doing things. It's a great skill to have. I talk about in other videos, like how we can have these metacognitive skills. Like, how do you learn how to learn? But learning, being able to learn from video games on the go while you're doing is a great skill to get better at. I tell people I can make everyone what we define as smarter. I can make everyone smarter by teaching them how to study and how to learn better. Video games have a similar impact. They teach you how to learn in many ways, which is why we're finding some of these kind of results. All right. A large percentage of those interested in STEM fields, so STEM, are also the same students who are playing esports. So in fact, the head of League of Legends, which is one of the most popular games, has indicated that almost 70 to 80% of those competing in their League of Legends leagues are interested in STEM careers. That's double the national average of students in general interested in STEM. So we're talking about a large percentage of students that play video games. Again, that tech fluency comes into play. Students who are playing games are going to be more interested in tech and engineering and that kind of stuff because they're playing with the technology, so they enjoy it. So that makes sense, but it's double the national average. Students who get interested in esports are more likely to be interested in STEM than students who are not. And then to piggyback on top of that, and this is a topic that's gaining a lot of traction right now. Competitive esports teams in schools satisfies a growing desire to train and educate students on soft skills emphasized in STEM and career technical education. So students playing esports are actually gaining some of those, problem solving and other soft skills that students need to have who are going to go into STEM and career technical education. It's also helping those same students get those skills that are required for English and language arts programs. Now, this is a topic that's really, really, really gaining a lot of traction as far as like the role that esports has in getting students involved in STEM fields. There are now NSF grants and other grants out there geared towards education to get more diverse learners, to get students who are disadvantaged, students who are not performing well in school, involved in esports in hopes that motivation actually carries over to some kind of technical field. So they're using it as a catalyst to get students interested in STEM. Now, I'm pointing out that the NSF has actually funded grants on this because I want people to realize that like this is something that's being recognized everywhere, not just like, hey, I want an esports. Esports is cool. Like it's really being recognized by organizations and a lot of really smart people. A lot of people with PhDs. Okay, so that's basically like in a gist video games and learning. Games for entertainment. What are students getting who are playing these games and just playing esports games for fun, or competing? What are they getting out of it? That's one part. That's the learning aspect. So kids are actually learning by just playing these games. And I've said it about my kids personally. Them playing video games has taught them to read better, has taught them basic math skills. Super impressive stuff that they learn from games. Okay, that's games and learning. Next topic, engagement and retention. Engagement and retention. Okay, so what does that mean? What do I mean when I talk about engagement and retention? So there's an interesting part of schools that is not necessarily happening in the classroom, but how do we get people to be engaged in their classroom? How do we get people to be engaged in their community and care about it? It's something that didn't happen to me personally when I was in school. I was never engaged in school until later on in high school when I finally got involved in art. And I always wished there had been something for me. So let's talk a little bit about what this research says and how this can really help students. So esports competition is a catalyst for the application of real-world skills and problem-solving ability. Okay, because they're working on teams, they're doing things together, they're really learning to manage people, manage each other. But the esports competition, when you're talking about like esports in schools, whether it's curriculum, whether it's a team, no matter really what it is, there's a big part of it that's gonna take place outside of the classroom, just like another sport. Because the competition, you're going to be competing against other schools and stuff, that's going to take place like a sport, like as an extracurricular activity, like a sport or a club or something like that. Okay. So what does that mean? Why is that important? Does it matter? Okay. So participation in extracurricular activities. Now, this is any extracurricular activity, not just esports, but we already know this. Everyone should know this, like principals, teachers, faculty, anyone in higher ed, they should know this statement right here. Participation in extracurricular activities leads to school identities, behavioral engagement in the classroom, higher grades and test scores, higher educational achievements, more regular class attendance, higher self-confidence, leadership, and better teamwork skills in students. Now, none of that should come as a surprise that when a student cares about school, when they have something there, when they become part of that community, they're more vested in it. And of course, they're going to want to do better, and that's going to show. It's no different than in corporate or business. When an employee owns part of the company or someone's the owner, they're vested in that company and they care more about it, and they usually perform well. We know this from business. Like this is a business case. We know this. We already know this. Same thing with like community. Just take like someone involved in their church, in their Cub Scouts or whatever it is, like local volunteering. They're more vested in their community and they care more about it. And that shows in all these other ways. So extracurricular activities in general are great for students. Now, additionally, participation in these activities decreases the use of drugs, alcohol, and behavior and discipline problems. Of course, I mean, obviously, they're going to be, you're involved in something, so you're not turning to that other stuff. Okay, now, more than 80% of students involved in esports, and this is students in the high school esports league. So the high school, this is the high school esports league is the one who reported this result. More than 80% of the students in the high school sports league were not involved in other extracurricular activities before esports. Wow, that's pretty crazy. 80% of these students were not involved in these extracurricular activities. So what that means is there's a whole big population of students out there that are not involved in extracurricular activities. So they're not getting school identity, school spirit, behavioral engagement, higher grades, because they're not involved in this, because there just isn't an activity that interests them. Maybe they're not able to be good at sports. For a variety of reasons, some people just can't play sports. Maybe they have some kind of disability. There's other reasons preventing them from doing it. Maybe they're just not good. Maybe it's not their interest or their passion. There are a million reasons why someone can't do it or doesn't want to do it. But regardless, if so there is a large population of students out there that are not being served whatsoever. So esports is an actual way to serve those students. Okay. There's more. Let's get there. All right. So what happens? What happens with these 80%, these students who weren't involved in it, this large proportion of students that weren't involved doing anything in their school? So without esports, these students who are passionate gamers often feel left out of school social life. Organized esports brings these kids into the fold. It helps them become accepted, helps them become respected members of their school and their community. But keeping them excluded, it can leave lasting damage. In fact, some researchers have said this exclusion of students from things they're interested in, like especially in school, is an invisible form of bullying to them. Kind of interesting to hear that being said that way. But you want to be able to bring these kids into the fold. You want to be able to make them involved. And this is one way to do it. You don't want to leave them out, especially when we know, like, hey, if we do this, we're going to potentially be able to get these kids interested and motivated towards school. Potentially kids who might not otherwise be interested. And not only that, but doing this, playing these games, like, why does it work? Like, why does it get them? Like, what is it about games? So there's this whole topic of like, should we be supporting games? Because kids are at home, right, playing video games. Like, we want to say they're at home playing video games 24/7, and really that's not the case. But for some kids, maybe they are doing that. So what's the rationale for esports? So, we've talked about some of this stuff, like, well, why esports? Like, why games as a school? Like, should schools be supporting games at all? So there's a study that's been done, and actually this was my study that I've done. It's still under review, but it is basically what we found, and we analyzed thousands of participants, is that playing games prior to like a learning activity leads to higher levels of engagement, higher levels of motivation, higher levels of achievement when they're actually learning. So playing like a fun game, like League of Legends, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, before you learn, and then going to your class to learn, Playing that game beforehand actually increases all that stuff for the class. How cool is that? But you know, the argument is that, so yes, esports does all this great stuff, but the real reason we should have games in our classroom is that we are now, instead of a student just going home and, you know, playing Call of Duty with his friends and that's it. When I have an esports practice with one of my esports teams, a 2 hour practice doesn't mean 2 hours of gameplay. A 2 hour practice means an hour of playing games and probably an hour of reviewing the games we played and talking about strategy and how we communicated and what we can do to improve to be better. So imagine, instead of a kid sitting at home and playing a game for 4 hours, they're actually at their school in some kind of structured activity, taking that same motivation and learning from it. We're controlling that gameplay. We're controlling how they use it and how they learn. And it makes it more fun for the student because they're actually feeling like they're accomplishing something. Gives them all this great stuff: motivation, good grades, feeling part of their community. We have a chance to do something really good for students here. So it's a great way to tie things together. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a lot more stuff out there I could talk about regarding this topic. This is just scratching the surface. I'm going to have a lot more of them coming out. So be on the lookout for those. But this was just the first one, just to kind of talk about, like, you know, basically what I talked about is why esports and learning, engagement and retention, and the big things like why should a university invest, or a high school or any K-12 organization invest in esports? Why is it worth it? Thank you.